Hello, YouTube. It's been a year since I've recorded. I think the only people who really watch this are my Pokemon friends and then my professor. Pretty awkward. But we got a pretty exciting video because my wife started reading again, proving that she is literate to the world. We got our top 10 favorite books. It's not the best books, it's just our favorite books. Yeah.
Shut up.
I don't know. That's all I got for the intro. You got anything?
I have nothing to say.
All right. We'll do some honorable mentions because I like clickbait, and I couldn't think of where to put these three books. We each got three honorable mentions. I'm gonna start first with. Ooh, look at that glare, and I'm blocking the thing. Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes. Did you ever read this
No,
in middle school?
no.
It's technically, I guess, a reread. The rules are, forgot to say, terrible intro, but we try to avoid rereads and we try to only limit ourselves to one book per author. But Flowers for Algernon, I read like a short story version of it in 8th grade, and I decided to reread it as an adult, and I really loved it. It was a pretty moving book. It is very depressing, though, as you'll see with most of my picks. But I really like the major themes of what makes us human, what makes us valued in society, things like that. My other pick was, you can't see it, but is By Night in Chile by Roberto Bolaño. I mainly picked it because I wanted to see if I liked his writing, because I'm very interested in, I think his novel is called 2666. It's this big old book, right? I think you've seen it. And I want to check this out, see if I was interested in his writing. And I am. It reminded me a lot of Amadeus, the movie.
Oh, I
You
love
know
that
how
movie.
sarcastic the narrator was. I should know his name, but it's a surprisingly funny book. Very deep when it comes to like the role of artists in society and what how power comes into being, what we should do when power is corrupting. And then lastly, because I love again clickbait, I had to make sure that this was included in the thumbnail, but it is very closely to the camera. I, who have never known men.
My dream situation.
Yeah, we both read it. I think it's only one of two books that we both read, and I think you gave it to me as the honorable mention, but you also would have talked about it if I wasn't already going to. But I liked how quiet, introspective it is. I read it with my Pokemon book club, and we all seem to like it. But those are my honorable mentions. What do you got?
Let me see here. So for my honorable mention, I'm going to actually mention an author, Michael Ferris Smith. I read two of his books, and I'm interested in reading more of his books. The first one I read was Nick, which is basically fan fiction about Nick from The Great Gatsby prior to the events of The Great Gatsby. And then I also read Salvage This World. A lot of the books that he does, it seems, outside of Nick, seem to be like based in the South and are like adjacent to a lot of the themes in the South, like weather and like religion and like the chokehold that like staying in the small town seem to have on folks. And I love anything about the South. I really thought it was funny. I kind of read both of these back to back, totally different tones in both. So I'm really interested to read kind of more of his books this year.
I'm afraid you're going to hit me.
I'm so sorry. Another book I read, I've had this on my list forever. It's My Dark Vanessa. I recommend, if you're going to read it, if you've had anything traumatic in your past, maybe read the triggers. It's not like a fun read, but it's written very well. I think it is a great telling of trauma from the victim's perspective and maintaining that perspective. I think a lot of times people want victims to be these kind of perfect victims, or they come away with XYZ from whatever, but I feel like this really captures what a lot of people go through in the moment. Really well done, very disturbing. So I know Jay would not be able to read this because there's a teacher involved, and ugh. So, but yeah, highly recommend that. And then I added a graphic novel because that was on my bingo. It's called A Guest in This House. I don't really want to talk too much about it because I don't want to give it away. But if you can't really afford like the $30 on it, I highly recommend getting this from the library. It's so good, but I don't really want to talk about it because it will give it fully away. But a kind of a bit of a weird mystery thriller set near a lake. Really
Does it
good.
remind you of anything?
I don't know.
That's fair.
It's really good. The art is fabulous, and you think it's going one way, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh. And I like when things go, so,
I think we
yeah.
both do. All right. Those are our honorable mentions. We'll get right into the top 10. So we don't really have a plan of how this video is going to go. I think, from just imagining it, our 10 through, let's say, 6 are going to go by pretty quickly. And then we'll probably have more to say about like our top 5. When I was thinking about this order, maybe we can talk about this first. I think my number 10 could be easily changed out with any of the honorable mentions. Do you think that's the same for your 10?
No.
Well, wow, contradicting me immediately. That's okay. But my 10 could probably be changed out. I mainly included it because of how different it is compared to the rest, because I read a lot of depressing novels this year. I'm sure you're aware.
Yes.
And this one was the most fun. After that, like 9 through, let's say, 5 can also be kind of changed around. Who cares about the order, really? 4 and 3, I think, pretty solid group together. And then 2 and 1 for me stand apart from all the rest. So what about you, real quick?
I would say my 1 and 3 are there for a reason. Everything else can kind of be moved around, like you said. I'm not like super hard on this is the number 1, this is da 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 da, because sometimes it just depends on the vibe or what I'm feeling. But I would say my number 1 is definitely like you can't replace that one at all.
Yeah, and we both know each other's number 1, but we're not going to say it yet. But that is, I think, a great feeling to know your significant other's number 1 from the entire year. Well, we'll jump right into it. So my number 10, sadly, I don't have the book on me, which is very strange because it's a giant book, so it can't really just disappear. So it's somewhere in my messy office, most likely. But it is The Devils by Joe Abercrombie. It is a fantasy novel about a group of devils, or really monsters or anything like that, who are trying to transport a princess across Europe so that she can take, I guess, or sit on the throne. I can't remember exactly. I read and sometimes it just escapes. But she's going to sit on the throne, and they need her on the throne so that they can join east and west of the empire together. Again, I think this book can easily be changed out with any of my honorable mentions, but I chose it because of how fun it is. It's very different than anything else that I read this year, because I actually had fun while reading it. I can't really say the same thing for a lot of these books. A lot of them are not going to be too much fun reading it, but I like this one. It is a standard fantasy novel. I don't know if you would like it. It is also kind of a standard adventure. You go from plot point A to plot point B, from location A to location B. But again, it's a lot of fun. Hopefully you can't hear the cat scratching right as we record.
Ambiance.
I'll cut that. Go on, Odin.
Odin. Anyways.
Yeah, it's standard. It's pretty traditional. I wouldn't say it's going to blow off your socks or anything like that. But I will say I appreciate the characters. I appreciate the voices. I think that is one thing that you would like. It's told through multiple points of view, and each character, if you put white out on the top of the chapter header and it didn't tell you which character was actually talking, it wouldn't matter because you would still be able to tell who was narrating this chapter. So props to that. And there did feel like there were actual stakes with this novel. So I liked it. I will definitely check out the rest of his series as he writes it, but that's The Devils by Joe Abercrombie. Your number 10?
My number 10 is The Lives of Lee Miller. This, I believe, is her son wrote this, I believe. I also have a coffee table book that this computer is precariously perched on top of as well. But I love women from history who didn't follow the same path as women at the time. I feel like a lot of times when we think about like the past, it's like, oh, everyone was so prim and proper, but people were just doing crazy things all the time, especially her. Basically, she got into photography. Her father was a photographer. She ended up going to New York at some point. First she ran away to like Paris and was doing things there until they were like, you literally need to come home. You're a child. And then she was living in New York. They discovered her there. She became a model. And then her modeling career was cut short because they took one of her photos and put it in a women's ad for things that women need. And that was scandalous at the time. And so she ended up getting into photography. I could go into a bunch of stuff, but some of the really fun things about this book is she married a man from Egypt, lived there, and then continued to have affairs with all sorts of men. And he was totally fine with it because he was like, as long as she's happy. Uh, she she went to World War II. She was one of the first ones to photograph the concentration camps. Like, she lived this, like, just insane life. Like, anytime I read about it, I'm like, how is this even possible? This can't be real. And there's little photographs from it. She was friends with Van Gogh. Is it Van Gogh? Yeah, Van Gogh. All sorts of famous artists, authors, writers, photographers. Her life's just really interesting. And I just really loved kind of living vicariously through kind of her adventures. Good, bad, ugly, all in between.
You want to say what, brought you to read this book?
What brought me to read this book?
We watched a movie.
We did. What movie did we watch?
Civil War.
That's right. Yeah, because they had...
One of the characters is named after her.
Yeah, one of the characters. That's right. Oh, yeah, that was a really good movie. I forgot we watched that. Yep. And then I was like, who is that person? So I love baddies throughout history, basically.
My number 9 is a book that we both read. Even though it didn't make it into your top 10, I think we liked it relatively the same. I wanted to include it because it is very different than a lot of things we've read. Martyr by Kavi Akbar. It is very experimental. I don't know if I really like this book. I'm going to be honest. I don't know if I really liked it because the narrator, the protagonist, right, is very unlikable, throughout this novel, but that is purposeful. Mm-hmm. And I can appreciate that. Even though it's not someone that I, would ever hang out with. I think I find his life and his story very interesting. But I think that's, one great thing about literature. We get different points of view that maybe we aren't, used to, or something that we would go out and look for, and we're forced to, hey Momo, we're forced to, read something that maybe we would never experience. But a Martyr is about, what would you say, like a upper 20s-ish year old man?
Yeah, like college educated, artsy, thinks he really is an artist, but doesn't spend probably enough time doing the art that he really thinks he is.
Yeah.
Like, I'm an artist, but he's not, doing anything.
Yeah, he's not practicing it. He calls himself a writer, but he doesn't write. He calls himself a poet, but again, he doesn't write. He wants to be thought of as an artist, but he doesn't, again, do anything that would be considered artistic, and his friends are worried for him. Mm-hmm. So his life is kind of tumultuous. It's all over the place. And he wants not his life to mean something. I think this is where I kind of really like the themes that are going with it. He doesn't want his life to mean something. He wants his death to mean something, which is where the title of this book comes in. And he gets inspired, and his friend tells him to go to New York, because in New York, there's an artist who is living in a museum documenting her death and her experiences as she's dying of cancer. And he goes, and that's where I'm not really going to say much else, because the whole rest of the novel and really the plot hinges on that point right there, his experience in New York. But I really liked it. I liked the philosophy behind this book. Mm-hmm. I liked, even though the protagonist was very annoying, I liked that he was relatable, mm-hmm. and he was very human. All of that. I think this book made a lot of bold choices, and if you read it with someone who you're close to, I think especially the ending can bring about some great conversations. It's a book that deserves to be talked about. Mm-hmm. It's very lyrical and poetic. The author himself is a poet. Mm-hmm. This is his first, his debut novel. And I think, read more of his works. Mm-hmm. What's your number 9?
My number 9. I think I wanted to say something. One thing I really liked about this book, there's this, I guess it doesn't give it away, but he does these imaginings, these dreamings of characters talking. Characters you wouldn't think are talking. I don't want to give it away, but I think it's really interesting. I really related with that because that's something I do all the time, where I'll something will happen and I'm like, I'm going to replay this. Let me talk it through with an imaginary therapist, or re-talk that conversation through with somebody. I felt that was really relatable. And I felt like his friends and family loved him in a way that sometimes I'm like, dude, what are you doing? But his best friend was so supportive, when honestly he was being kind of a jerk a lot of the times and jerking him around. And I'm like, the fact that his friend loved him so much, I think that made me endear to the character a little more, even when he was being annoying. And I'm annoying, so
Yeah.
I mean, I can understand that.
I mean, it really speaks about, we sometimes do not believe we deserve love. And I think this book really tries to tackle that question as well. So now you want to talk about your number 9?
Yes. So my number 9 is I don't have a copy of it because it's sold out in the US and Canada. That's right, folks. It's Heated Rivalry and The Long Game, the sequel. I, like everybody else, am obsessed with the Heated Rivalry TV show. I'm, of course, in these kind of spaces, so I knew about this book and this book series, but I'd never been really into the hockey romance genre. Now, do I like to go see hockey players beat each other up? Yes. But I hadn't got into the actual romance books of it. And so I watched the first 2 episodes and I was like, I need to know everything about these 2 people. So I read them like in 2 days and then I went back and reread them. So I technically read them twice in December. It is my favorite romance trope, which is like kind of the like enemies, friends to lovers. One thing I really loved about this book is the 2 characters. They're like the top hockey players. So you have Ilya Rozanov, who is a Russian immigrant. He is in Boston for the made-up team there. And then you have Shane Hollander, who is in Canada. They're both number 1 and 2, respectfully. And they have like this rivalry that the basically the media has made up, but really they're like having friendly relations the whole time. And one of the things that's really funny is they always talk about like, oh, we're rivals, or we need to cut this off. This is silly that we keep doing this. And then they immediately meet up and all that's forgotten. But I mean, the story kind of hits you with the smut, obviously, right at the beginning, but then you stay for the love story because both characters, Shane is undiagnosed autistic. The author Rachel Reed did confirm that. And then, of course, Tierney, the director, he also confirmed that's how the character was played in the show. And I really related a lot with him just because I'm very socially awkward. Sometimes people need to tell me things straight up, or if they're being coy about it, I don't quite get it. Ilya Rozanov, Russian, terrible dad. He sucks so much. He has a lot of family issues, and like it's how these 2 characters are able to kind of like all this craziness, all this stuff surrounding them, they find this like true love and companionship. So like you start thinking, oh, this is really cool smut, and then you're like crying at them like, oh my god, they're truly in love. The Long Game is kind of the sequel, so at the end they basically are like, yeah, we're in love. What are we going to do? And it's kind of like The Long Game is kind of the sequel of like how hiding their relationship, hiding who they are, their sexuality kind of really affects negatively all parts of their life, and how coming out, as scary as it is, living their true self and their true life and those that love them just makes everything worth it. So I highly recommend reading it, or at least watching the TV show. It's some of the best TV I've seen all year. What the director does with the performances is incredible. Usually romance is really cheesy and kind of I have a hard time watching it, but there's just so much shown instead of being like they're in love, like they show it. Like it's just incredible. It's so good. You have to read it.
All right. That's our number 9. All right. My number 8 is, oh, you can't see it at all, but it is The Post Office Girl by Stefan Zweig, I think is how you say it. I'm not the best with German or anything like that. But The Post Office Girl, I think out of all of my books that I have in my top 10, I think this would be the one that you actually like the most. Because it is about a girl, obviously, who doesn't have the best of life, and circumstances have really beaten her down. But she's given this opportunity to experience life, and something else happens that's going to kind of put the story and flip it upside down. But it's a great book. It's about a young woman who's going through life at a job that she hates, right? A job that makes her feel very, monotonous. Life is boring. Life doesn't really have meaning. Poverty has really beaten her down. The World War has beaten her down, destroyed her opportunities in life because most of her childhood friends and maybe lovers or possible lovers have died in the war and have moved on. So she's kind of left as an empty shell. But along the way, in the middle of her life, in her like mid-20s, she's visited by her, not visited, she's sent away on holiday, You know how Europeans, they have holiday. We do not really in America. But she's sent away on holiday to visit her rich, very wealthy aunt and uncle. And she gets to stay with them for a little over a week at one of the finest hotels in Europe. Um, and I just think it's so beautiful, the juxtaposition between her life in this small town and her experiences at the hotel. I think I didn't write this down, but one thing that I really appreciate about this book is definitely the imagery throughout. Like, this book is very short. I mean, you can see it's not the thickest thing in the world, but each sentence is just, punctured with so much descriptions. It is littered throughout, and I just really like it. It's definitely, if I needed to describe it, to sell it to you more than anything, it's almost like a better version of Cinderella. I really like Cinderella a lot, and I know you do too. But it's a Cinderella that'll make you even more upset, I think, and even angrier at the world. I know. Am I selling this book to you? I don't know.
I like when things are sad.
But I think at the center of this book, right, is trying to really talk about this message of, like, I'm sure many of us have heard it before. Money doesn't buy happiness, which is a load of garbage, right? Money doesn't buy happiness, but it certainly gets rid of a lot of stress. And our narrator, our young woman in this novel, deals with this question, and she deals with the unfairness that has been placed on her because she is poverty stricken. And I don't want to say much else. There's one other thing that I really like about this book, and it is the midway point. It is flipped upside down. This book is told into two parts. One part is all of her adventures in the hotel, and everything, and the second part is everything that comes after. And that's all I'm going to say. I think some people may not like the second half of the novel because it is very different than the first half, but I liked it. So what's your book?
Well, I kind of want to read that now, to be honest. I think that sold me. So my book is also, what are they called?
NYRB.
NYRB. I think you were the one who told me about this. So this is Eve's Hollywood, by Eve Babbitt. She is, I guess, like the pop culture of her. She's this famous photograph of her sitting naked playing chess with this famous chess player whose name I don't remember, but I'm sure there's people out there who do know. But I think this is, it's not one of like her big famous ones. The way to describe this book is, imagine yourself, you're waiting like at a bar. It's a weird time before social media. You're two cocktails in, you're like, where is she? She comes flying in. It's like a gust of breeze coming in, sits down, and then just starts telling you stuff. That's kind of how I feel like this book is. Each chapter is kind of like a reminiscence on the Hollywood that she grew up in. So it kind of starts with childhood stories. They're kind of a mixture of different types of stories, from just like memories of childhood, randomness from when she's older. Some chapters can be a bit meandering, and I'm like, I don't really care that much about this. Others are really interesting cultural pieces of the time that you probably wouldn't have gotten if you read this, like a bunch of things I didn't know, places, locations that are there and no longer there. She also has these random chapters where she kind of like sets up a punchline, and you don't realize it's going to be a punchline till you get to the end of the chapter. One of the ones that I really like is she meets this guy who calls himself Bummer Bob. That's like how he has like a pin to, super lame and weird, I know. He's like this famous musician. Towards the end of the chapter, she runs into someone who knew him, was really close. I think they were like lovers at some point. And she was like, oh, have you heard from him? And she's like, oh my God, yes, he's in prison. He wrote me this letter, da 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 da. And Eve's like, oh God, what a bummer. And the woman starts crying. Well, this guy happened to be one of the guys who went to prison because he was involved with the Mansons and what they were doing when I read about it later. So there's kind of a lot of name drops. You don't realize who they are until you kind of do research. Also, some names I've never heard of, but it's really fascinating. She's kind of wild and crazy. I went through my, I didn't start doing this till the end of the year, but I started in my journal journaling about the books, which kind of helped me remember a lot more. But a quote that I wrote down after I wrote about this book is, I wrote about why I like stories like this. I was like, not so good, but not so bad women fascinate me. So, like, I don't think she's necessarily a bad person. She's not a good person. She's just a person. And I just think her voice is really interesting, especially at a time in the 50s when, again, women are supposed to be docile in a certain way. And, like, she was doing some crazy stuff that I won't put on here because you have to bleep out. But yeah, really fascinating. I'm excited to read another book by here. Jay got me. I combined them. What was the book you got me? Fast Times, Fast Lives.
And her most famous
Yeah,
book, I
her
can't
most
remember.
famous one. So I'm excited to read that this year and more from her.
My number 7, and it's probably my favorite cover of the year because you know, it is seen from everywhere. That is Glorious Exploits by Ferdia Lennon. I love this book so much. I know I talked about The Devils being the most fun and exciting book I read this year, and I completely forgot about Glorious Exploits. I think Glorious Exploits is actually the most fun I had this year reading. It is about, let me see if I can remember everything, 2 Sicilian men in like ancient Greek times who want to put on a play, and in order to put on this play, this Greek tragedy, they have to use prisoners, captured soldiers from another army, as their actors, and that's the gist. That's all you need to know about the whole book. It is wonderful. I know that doesn't sound like too funny as like
That would be your nightmare if you
that
were a prisoner to
yeah.
be in a play.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it would be the most enjoyable or, again, the most hilarious plot line, but it is pretty funny because of the character's voice. And I think that is going to be like my number one takeaway from this book is if you want an interesting and unique narrator with a great voice, it's going to be this book. Just the settings, great to read. Again, the imagery I think is wonderful. There are just moments of humanism in this that just speaks to my soul, my old man soul, about the power of art and the power of theater, and how we build communities and how we maybe include some and exclude others. I really like that. The ending, I think, without giving too much away, it has the potential to sour on some people, but I liked it, and that's okay, right? This is my list.
Yeah,
So
that's
Glorious
right.
Exploits, right? Number 7 for me. What's your 7?
It is Such Times by Christopher Coe. So I bought this book along with the Eve Babbitts one at the same time and read them back to back. This story is written by a man who died of AIDS in 1994. I believe he finished writing and published this in 93. So this was like his last work before his passing away. It is the story of a young man who meets a much older man and kind of their romance that blossoms over several decades. The older man does have like a long term partner, has also other people he's kind of like hanging out with. And it is a love story, but it's also something else. It's really hard to describe. There were times I was really angry at the older man because it was very obvious the younger man was like really in love with him, wanted them to be together, but they just couldn't be in that way. I feel like this is kind of like a timepiece from that time. We've lost so much, so many stories and culture because of the AIDS epidemic and the people that we lost during that time. And book is almost like frozen in time. I feel like I don't know much about the author's real life. We don't know like a ton of like historically about him. But I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the stories or the people in here could be potentially based off the people he knew, people he was interacting with. One of what is it called when someone write? Is it the foreword when someone writes at the beginning of the story?
Yeah, sure.
One of his friends wrote this beautiful foreword that is just as good as the book itself. Usually those forewords, a lot of times I'm like, okay, get to the point. Like I get it, but it was just a beautiful like memory that he shared with his friend. The book's really sad. Definitely not fun like the other one. I love Dominic, who's the friend of the main character in this book. Throughout the book, he has this beautiful, luscious hair. He tells a story about how every night he would brush his hair every single night with these silver hairbrushes from his grandfather. And he said he would visit with himself at the end of each day. And then towards the end of the novel, he gives the main character those hairbrushes because he too is also dying from AIDS. And it's just, I don't know, it's just such a beautiful story. I picked this up randomly. This publisher is like finding books. They like had to hunt this down to get a copy of this. And I just can't imagine how many other stories from that time were missing or that were lost to time. So I'm hoping maybe to find more like that, or maybe these newer publishers can find stories like this. But highly, highly recommend. Beautiful story.
My number 6 is very different. It's a nonfiction. But before I get into it, I want you to think about your favorite English teacher, right? And how they taught. All right. Your answer is supposed to be your husband, right? Because I am an English teacher.
You never taught me.
That's true. But my book for number 6 is A Swim in a Pond in the Rain by George Saunders. It is nonfiction. It is his exploration of Russian literature, which I'm not like the most well versed when it comes to Russian literature, but it is his studying and his way of breaking down these Russian short stories into ways that we can understand, which doesn't sound exciting. I was really worried when it was pitched to me originally, like, okay, am I going to get anything from this book? Are we going to look at similes and metaphors? You know, as an English teacher, I enjoy those things, but, you know, is he going to beat me over the head, you know, with an anvil, you know, trying to get me to understand these stories? And no, he didn't. I think George Saunders has a great way of dissecting stories and a great way of making us, as the readers, look into a story as well and look at the itty gritty details of a story and what makes it beautiful, what makes the writing beautiful, and how an author can really lead the readers along this path that we're taking, right? I loved it a lot. I'm not going to speak too much about it because my number 5 is going to be connected to this and why I enjoyed it so much. If you are someone who likes writing and you like, you know, doing deep dives into reading and, you know, doing close reading with some of your favorite books, I would pick this up. I think it really helps me kind of be a somewhat better teacher. I don't know if I'm that great of a teacher, but I do teach a lot of short stories with my middle schoolers. And it's made me pause, slow down, and really look at, you know, the sentence structure as well.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. But what is your number 6? Because I'll talk more in a little bit.
So my number 6 is Station 11. I originally read, I think, the first chapter like the year before, and then just life got in the way, and I was like, all right, I'm finally going to read this. I love post-apocalyptic stuff. I would say this is more of, I know this is a weird way to put it, this is more of a vibe than a straight up post-apocalyptic type. Like earlier, you said that one story you felt like it was one thing after another. And I guess that technically happens in here, but it's more of a vibe. It's like everything kind of meanders together and you slowly figure out how it kind of all comes together. I'm sure a ton of people have read this because it came out like during the pandemic.
5 years before.
Oh yeah, that's right. So hopefully she doesn't predict anything else bad. But it kind of reminded me of this other book that I read that I didn't include on the list called All the Water in the World, where this kind of focuses on a main core group and like how they're emotionally and dealing with what's happening. Kind of like that book, it's based on a young child and how she's handling it and the people around her. So I don't feel so stressed reading it because I know everything's going to be okay. I just kind of like the character study of like, what do people do when the world is ended? Like, how do they act? So I think that's what's really good about it. I'm more of a character focused person anyways.
Yeah, and I read this, I think, a year before you. And I think, for me, anything that involves allusions to Shakespeare, I love. I can dig it. Well, that's our number 6, or no, what is that? Yeah, number 6.
Yay.
All right, my number 5 is very much connected to number 6, at least in my mind, and that is The Sea Scraper by Benjamin Wood. I read it on my Kindle. We actually just saw it in the bookstore this past weekend. I read it on my Kindle because it wasn't available in the United States until like last month. But The Sea Scraper, I connect it with George Saunders' novel because I think out of all the books I've read, this book deserves to be deeply read. Like it deserves to be studied at a sentence by sentence level, and that's why I like to connect the two, purely based on vibes. Right? This book, if you summarize the plot, it's not going to sound very interesting, but I think the more boring a plot sounds, the more I'm going to like it. But it is about early 20s man who is a sea scraper, meaning he takes his horse and his buggy, he goes into the water at low tides, and he scrapes the bottom of it in order to get shrimp and other things. That is his life, and that's really it. He lives in a small town. I can't remember exactly which country it is. I believe it is UK adjacent, somewhere in there. We don't actually know the time that this novel is taking place, which is one of those timeless elements that I think Benjamin Wood, the author, was going for, because the narrator, our main character, he has a job that we might associate with like the 1800s, but then you'll see like conversations about the radio and popular movies from like the 70s, and you're just like, what is going on? But this book, I think, it shows the beauty of a well-crafted story, and again, sentence by sentence structure, and really how an author takes promises at the beginning of a novel and delivers on those promises in the middle and in the end. And I just loved it so much. I am not the original creator of this idea. I saw it in a review, and I think it deserves to be repeated. If you're reading this novel, the atmosphere and the tone and the setting is just so beautiful. As you're reading it, it almost feels like the fog is enveloping you as you're reading it. The pages are crusted over with salt and spray as well, and you're like trying to pry it open. It's wonderful. Like the atmosphere, I think, can get you really involved and really into this book. And I think anybody should read it when it is cold, because you will feel cold and you will feel miserable and you will feel wet. And like, I know, maybe not that, but you'll feel like
No, I
just
get what you mean.
miserable as you're reading this. And it's just wonderful. I'm not going to say anything else because it is a simple plot, and it is very much going to be, it's going to rely on this moment that our main character is introduced to someone, and I want new readers to experience that. It was long listed, I think, for the Booker, and I am surprised many readers who read this, we were surprised that it wasn't shortlisted. It deserved to be shortlisted for all of the major awards last year. But that's my number 5. What do you got?
That's hard to follow that up. So I've got Girl Interrupted. I'm surprised I've never read this before. Some of you might have seen the movie. What's her name? With the lips is in it. Angelina Jolie. But this is basically the story of a girl who is committed to a mental health ward, kind of against her will. Pretty much the story starts with her getting loaded into a vehicle and sent away. There's a lot of kind of gray area about how she got submitted. Mental health has never really been good in the US, maybe until more recently when people are like, oh, maybe we should actually care about people and not do bad things to them because they're suffering. So kind of the story just talks about her time in there, the people she meets. It's really sad. A lot of the girls that she meets in there, I don't want to say that she's like less mentally ill than the other people in there, but she's a little more grounded to a degree than some of the other girls that she is in there with. But you can definitely tell there's something going on with the author. She even writes about her time after being in there, and it seems like there's still kind of gray about like what happened in there. Is she really diagnosed with this? Like, I don't know. It's just really kind of hard to describe this book. It's like her version of what happened there. And it was just really interesting. Again, I love reading about women in different time periods outside of my own, because here I am in this time, so I want to know what other women are doing in other times. But just a really interesting look at mental health in that specific time and place. It's kind of like a little chunk of history put in the book.
All right, again, the normal rules are that you don't include rereads, but you're going to feel old in a second. It has been, it's been 21 years since I've read this book, and I read it for the first time since then, since I was in 7th grade, because I was teaching it for the first time to my 8th graders last year, and that is To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. I'm not going to speak too much about this book because I feel like if you are watching this video, you're probably familiar with To Kill a Mockingbird. It's an American classic for a reason, and I think I needed to be reminded of that as I was rereading this. It's just been one of those books that's been in my periphery my entire life. Like, yeah, I read it when I was in middle school. I've heard it discussed in lectures and other people online, and friends and family, right? Oh, we've all read it. We've all watched the movie as well. Both the movie and the books are classics, deserve all the praise, right? But it made me cry. I'm not gonna lie. Atticus is someone who I greatly appreciate as a character and as a figure, and my students I think appreciate him as well. It was tough reading some parts in front of my kids. I was like, oh, I don't want to get too emotional in front of them, but I think it's important that they see examples of emotion, positive emotion, and masculine emotion, right? That men can have feelings as well. You watched a fake lesson that I had to give as well, involving some of the advice and lessons that Atticus gives his kids and the comparisons that I use with different poems as well. But I think, I love the voice of Scout. She's one of my all-time favorite characters now, as well as Atticus and even Jim, Boo Radley, all of them memorable characters. If you have never read this and you're an adult, please go out and buy it and read it right now. If you haven't read it since you were a kid, reread it. I think you will get a lot out of it.
I think it's one of those books you read as a kid and you take something away from it, and then as an adult you could take something else away from it. Because I feel like as a kid you're like, oh, I'm Scout, like, but as an adult you see like what Atticus is going through, what the adults are going through, and you're like, oh. So yeah, really good book. What number are we at?
4.
Number 4. Unfortunately, this is one of my special interests. I read Into Thin Air by Jon Krakauer. It is about the 1996 Mount Everest disaster that happened. That whole season was an entire disaster. I won't get into that. But I'm always fascinated by people who want to climb Mount Everest, and why do they do it? You're miserable. It's awful. It's not fun. And no one is making you do it, yet you do it. I love this book. There's a bit of a controversy about it because a lot of people, say like certain things didn't happen, certain things did. I'm just kind of taking it as face value as a internal person's account of what happened, just kind of on that face value, regardless of everything else. The book starts off with John literally at the top of Mount Everest, and literally his only thought is, I'm over this. I need to get back down. What am I doing here? Why am I here? This is like insane. He has a quote kind of at the beginning that I thought, because each chapter he has like a quote from either another mountaineer or like some text that relates to that chapter. But one of the quotes, I just wanted to read it was Thomas Hornbean, which is also a famous mountaineer. He said, "But at times I wondered if I had not come a long way only to find that what I really sought was something I left behind," which is kind of like what I've noticed reading about Mount Everest, not just this book, but a lot of stuff about it, is like, it's like people are trying to find something there. They're trying to forget something there. And everyone's reasons are different. And that's fascinating. No, I will not be climbing Mount Everest, but I know how to climb it because I did a whole research on it. But I think this is just a really interesting account about how like anything can go wrong. I think a lot of people, when this disaster happened in 1996, wanted to blame someone or something or find a moral reason behind it, but it just happened. Like, I mean, you could say any number of reasons are the reasons why everything happened. But I don't know. I'm just really fascinated by people who want to climb a big mountain for no reason. So, highly recommend it if you're interested in real life, like just nature, disasters, things like that. That's kind of my bread and butter.
We're in the top 3 podium places, right? My number 3 is Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut Jr. I finally took the plunge into reading some of Vonnegut's works. Well, I read 2. I read Slaughterhouse-Five, which made it into my top 10, and then Cat's Cradle, which I thought was okay. But Slaughterhouse-Five, right before I hit record, I told you I don't know how to describe this book, and I think I'll probably just leave it at that. It is about a man who becomes unstuck in time, and he experiences his past, present, and future all at once, and his brain, his being, is transported to these different moments. But that's not it. He doesn't just experience things on Earth. One of his experiences he is transported to like a human zoo ran by aliens, and his experiences in there. But it is an absurd book. If you are familiar with this book at all, you will agree with that. It's absurd. It's a jumbling mash of like a plate of spaghetti that you don't know one end from the other, right? But I love it because of that. You may think as you're reading it that it's completely random, that it's not really doing anything, but then it fits, very carefully together at the end. It is one of the most famous anti-war novels out there because, again, of how absurd this novel is. It's really pointing at the absurdity of war itself, because one of his experiences that this narrator's living through is his time during World War II, where he survived, a firebombing by sleeping in a slaughterhouse. The whole city was wrecked except of where he and his fellow prisoners were kept. And I think that is just, again, speaks to the absurdity of life in general and just how messed up everything can be. But I loved it because it's experimental. I wish it's one of those books that I wish I could write. Just how carefully crafted it is, while again seemingly all over the place. But what's your number 3? Your podium.
So my number 3 is a series I've heard about for a very long time, and I finally took the plunge. I was a little nervous because of the warnings for the book, but I feel like when you read the warnings, it does a disservice a little bit, because it's one of those books where it's like you think it's one thing, but it's really another. So I read the Captive Prince trilogy and then the little like epilogue thing that she does. Here, we'll do one of these. What are you doing? Oh, are you looking at it? Oh, yeah. Very pretty. But yeah. So this is the story of, and I hope I'm saying the names right. I never looked up how to say the names, but it's Damon, who kind of lives, I guess, in like, it's like Greek culture is the best way to describe it. It's not real life. It's obviously like some kind of fantasy or alternative world, who's, due to his brother usurping his throne after his father dies, gets sent as a captive to be basically a slave to Prince Laurent in the other kingdom, which is the neighboring kingdom they're always fighting against. Unfortunately, Laurent is going to be king, but right now his uncle is the one in charge, and the uncle doesn't want Laurent to be king. Obviously, why would he want to give that up? So the story, the first book, it's kind of a tough read, I'll be honest. I don't think children should be reading this series at all. But the first book is a bit of a tough read. And then the second book, as you're getting through it, you're like, oh. It's one of those stories where it really, you have to read the whole thing to get all of it to make sense and why the characters are the way they are. One of my favorite moments in book 2, without giving anything away, is the hat scene. That's all I'll say about it. That's one of the moments I was like, okay, this author knows what she's doing. But it's one of those things where it really sets it up. Obviously, the two characters do fall in love. It's a romance. Obviously, if you look up this book, that's what you're going to find. But I love that, like, it's not insta-love. It's nothing like that. Again, the enemies to lovers, that's my thing. There has to be some yearning and some reason you want to be together. If you're just automatically in love, that's lame. Jay and I were friends for 2 years before we got together, so I think that's probably where that comes from, to be honest. But yeah, it's just really good series, and I loved the main characters. I loved Laurent so much. Like, he's one of those, like, steely, like, ugh, kind of guys, but really once you get to know him, there's just, like, so much heart and love that he's hiding, that he has to hide. So highly recommend it if you're, like, a book girly who loves romance. Highly, highly recommend. Maybe read some of the triggers for the first book. But besides that, once you get through that first book, it really kind of goes from there. But yeah, totally love this series.
What is it?
It's the Captive Prince series. So there's book 1, 2, and 3. Like, oh my god, it's just so good. I read them all like twice, back to back.
All right, my number 2, and I think in the last month you realized, without giving away my number 1, that this was actually really close, because this book forced me to reread a book from earlier in the year to make sure it wasn't just recency bias, that I felt like my number 1 was my number 1, because it was really close. It took me 3 whole weeks in the month of December to read this book, and that is Angle of Repose by Wallace, I believe it's Stegner. It is a Western, and I read maybe one Western a year, and I feel like I need to read more Westerns because, as you are aware, every time I read a Western, I love it. And I think that's only 3 years in a row that I've read a Western. Butcher's Crossing is probably my number one favorite book of all time. True Grit, loved it. And now Angle of Repose. So I think I just need to read more Westerns. This is a Western really about Westerns. So if I read more in the genre, I think I would appreciate it even more, which I think is the strength of this book. Again, I haven't read a lot from this genre, but I still appreciate everything that it's doing. It is about a man, an older man, in the 1970s, and he is writing a biography. He's a professor, history professor, and he chose to write a biography about his grandmother and her time in the West, settling in different parts of the West, moving throughout the West with her husband as he's trying to become an engineer, trying to make a name for himself, trying to make a fortune, really trying to break and civilize, I'll put quotes around that, civilize the West and bring, Eastern influences, the wealthy, the elites, the educated, all of that from the East into the West. And it's just wonderful. It's two stories in one. The professor researching his grandmother, researching his family. We get him as the narrator. We get him kind of breaking the fourth wall over and over as he's writing about his grandmother. There are so many times in here where he's like, "Grandmother, I wish you would, listen to your husband, or I wish you understood what was getting ready to happen." All these, wonderful moments of him interjecting himself into the story, and really, forcing the readers to pause and be like, "Oh wait, he's trying to say something really cool and interesting." It's a very long book. Again, it took me 3 whole weeks to read it, but I think every single part of it was needed. I love that about a novel that is 500 plus pages. Sometimes you feel like, oh, you can cut that, or that's not needed. I feel like every part of this book is needed. It's a full 4-course meal, right? Just absolutely adored this book. I think I was telling you, books that speak about time and speak about generations in a family really I connect with, because I'm interested in my family's legacy and what's going to come after us, right? Who knows? And I like to look at time. I like to look at, in a way, generational trauma.
My favorite.
Yeah. And I think I will think about 2 moments in particular, and maybe this will sell other people in this book. One, it's early in the novel. It's not really a spoiler, but the historian who's writing the biography about his grandmother, he gets to a part in the book where his grandmother is talking to her parents, and our narrator cannot describe her parents because they exist so far back in time that's just a blur. Mm-hmm. And I think about that, like my great grandparents, like they are nothing more than just images on a photo, and I'm lucky to even have that. Mm-hmm. It's very difficult to imagine people that far back, and it's just a wonderful moment. And then the ending, when you realize what this whole story is about. I said it's a Western about Westerns. It's about a person dealing with trauma and using their family's trauma to understand his trauma. And it's wonderful. I think it wraps up beautifully. In fact, I'm talking about it more and more. It makes me realize that, it's pretty hard to choose my number one book. Honestly, I could probably put this as a tie with my number one. We'll see if I can talk about my number one as much as this one. Mm-hmm. We'll see. But what's your number 2?
So my number 2 probably would have been my number 1 if I didn't read my number 1 this year. This was actually the first book I read this year, and I'm glad I did because it really started me on reading again. I used to read a lot growing up, and then capitalism demanded I sacrifice my soul, so I'm trying to get back my soul right now. But I read Angels Before Man. This is the retelling of the creation of Lucifer, who's was an angel before he fell. It's the telling of his creation, his life in heaven, and the fall of the angels. I grew up going to church, super hardcore. So this book really spoke to me a lot. Little Rachel would have been scandalized to read a book like this. It's written, it's very beautiful the way everything is described. They even describe, I'm sure you guys online have seen the biblically accurate angels. There's like descriptions of the angels before they were the angels created in God's image and how God created them in his image later on. One thing that's kind of goes throughout the book is the watching and the eyes and the constant being seen and perceived. If you grew up in the church or still in the church, like kind of that thought police of God's always watching, he always knows what you're doing. Like growing up, I would like censor my own thoughts because I thought I was being watched constantly. And there's kind of a lot of imagery about eyes and seeing you and what you are and who you are in this story. I think it would have been harder to read a couple years ago when I was early in my deconstruction journey, but now that I'm kind of healed a bit more, this was like, it was just really good. It's a beautiful book. The art is amazing. I found the artist on Tumblr and follow them still. They have amazing art. There's there's two main sequels and like a mini novel following this, so I'm going to read those this year because the third came out. I was kind of waiting so I could read them all back to back. But this is just a beautiful book. I think anyone who grew up in the church would be really fascinated by this, and if you didn't grow up in the church, it would be fascinating and feel kind of like ooh. But yeah, really love this book.
And that's going to lead us right into our number one. My number one is First. I read it in May, and then because of Angle of Repose, my number two, I felt like I had to reread it just to make sure that I still loved it just as much. And spoiler alert, I did. And that is The Maniac by Benjamin Labatut. It is very much like Slaughterhouse-Five. It's very difficult to describe this book. It is told in three parts, three sections. I wish I could remember all the names. Again, it's a sciencey book, so it's almost like a fictional biography about the different scientists who helped create the early field of computation, the field of AI, and nuclear fission and fusion, whatever you want to say. We'll get into that. But really, this book, even though it's broken up into three parts, the main focus of the book is on part two, which is about Johnny von Neumann, the smartest man to ever have existed, according to some people, even according to Albert Einstein. They were friends during their lives together. But Johnny von Neumann, he is the father of computers, essentially. He had his hands and his fingers in so many different pies, in so many different fields. If you look at his Wikipedia, you'll just see he did this, he did this, he did this, he did this. He worked in this field, he worked in that field. Whatever interested him, he worked in. And he just loved learning. And you really got that through this novel. Benjamin Labatut, we're not going to say any names, okay?
Okay.
But I think we both will know because I read a novel by a certain author earlier in the year. We can tell when authors are intelligent, right? And sometimes, though, an author is going to use their intelligence as like, look how smart I am. And Benjamin Labatut is the exact opposite of that. He's intelligent. He knows he's intelligent when through his writing, but he's not going to beat the reader over the head. He takes very complex themes and very complex ideas and simplifies them in a way that even I can understand them, especially when it comes to all the talks about computing, the talks about AI, the talks about even the board game Go. Yeah.
I watched an anime about that.
Of course. But he takes all these complicated ideas and he makes it, enjoyable to read. And maybe I shouldn't say simplified because it is still a very complex, very nuanced novel. But he makes it enjoyable. He turns this kind of biography about these famous scientists into a thriller. A lot of people, when they're reading this, I know you weren't the biggest fan of the movie, but a lot of people, when they read this, they thought of Oppenheimer, the movie, right? And I could see it. As you're reading this, you can kind of picture a lot of it because, again, part two about Johnny von Neumann, he does spend time in Los Alamos with Oppenheimer and a lot of those scientists as well. And they looked to him for a lot of advice too.
Oh.
So again, that's kind of proof of how intelligent and kind of scary von Neumann was, which is really the one of the major themes of this book, right? Men of importance, men with power and with intelligence sometimes do not have morals. That's just one thing that we have to talk about, right? They are so intelligent that they are almost alien to the rest of us. And you almost worry about, like, okay, do they actually have our best interests in mind? Do they actually care about humanity, or do they only care about reaching forward to the next step of whatever evolution looks like? And it's really scary. And throughout this novel, it is terrifying in a way, especially with, we are in the rise of AI and ChatGPT and all that. Don't want to scare anybody. Like, your job could easily be replaced by
They're
AI.
trying to.
Yeah. My job, we've already seen that it can't be replaced, but people just look at teachers as like babysitters. So it's scary in that regard. So all these terrifying ideas, but one thing that I really appreciate with this book is, like, throughout all the murkiness and throughout all the, like, depressing moments, there is this very small glimmer of hope that I think is threaded throughout this book, especially in part 3, the part about Go, the board game. I think, if you are reading this book and you were just like, oh my gosh, when am I going to feel happiness ever again? Just wait until you get to that part. I think this is a wonderful book full of complex characters, complex themes that I try to grapple with all the time. What is the role of knowledge in our world? How much knowledge is too much knowledge? What can we trust these people with our lives? I don't know. That's really all I got to say. It's a beautiful book. I will probably reread it again at some point in the future, just to get more thoughts. But it's another book, just like The Sea Scraper, that I think it begs to be, deep dived into. I think close reading is important with this. But what is your number one?
Well, I do want to read this book. It made me think of like an Oppenheimer where he's going to do that bomb. And then it happens and he's like, oh, what have I done? I hadn't thought this far about what happens once I create the bomb, that they're going to explode on people. But I'm really excited to read that. I feel like this sounds like one of those books you can read at different times, probably even 10 years, and get something different from it then, and still the kind of core will stay the same. So I'm excited to read that this year. We'll see if it makes my list. So my number one book is one that my lovely husband recommended. He's like, yeah, you're going to like this. And he was right. It is The Spear Cuts Through Water. This is one of those books. It's really hard to talk about because it's so many things. The structure of this book is so good. It is like a story within a story within a story within a story. I think you could probably reread this multiple times and find stuff you didn't even see the first time. I think if you're interested in this kind of like Howl's Moving Castle, Spirited Away, Avatar: The Last Airbender, like the vibe of those is like how they make you feel kind of in your heart is how this book made me feel. Because there's just a lot going on. At the core, there's two main characters who I absolutely fell in love with within this book. I don't even want to talk too much about it because I think you just need to read it because there is a moment in the book where you go,
Well, I think that's what, I don't want to
you
step
go
on
ahead.
your toes, but that's what I told you. Like, the ending of the chapters, I can't remember if they're chapters. It's been like a year and a half since I've read it, but the endings of each and every section are my favorite parts of the book. And you're just like, wait, what? Especially the first day, right?
Yeah.
The ending of the first day. I think once you get to that, you're like, oh, this isn't a normal
Yeah.
fantasy book.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like when I first started reading this, I was like kind of annoyed because it felt really like kind of ostentatious. Like, oh my God, am I really going to slog through like this fantasy novel? No offense to fantasy novels, but sometimes I can get a little exhausted. But this is one of those books you need to invest in the story and you'll get out so much more from it. That's what I've told anyone who've asked about like my top book is like, just trust me, invest and it will pay off. It's one of those books that really pays off. I'm really excited to try and reread it in probably like a year or two. I want to give some space from it and then kind of reread it. But I really don't want to talk too much about the plot outside of there is a young man who's an immigrant from some war in some land that his family is now living in. It's kind of vague, which I kind of like because then it could really be anybody. If you're an immigrant, you could probably really identify.
Because
And
it's told in what point of view?
third person, two persons, second person.
Two person, second person.
Two person point of
That
view.
you, right?
And it's kind of, it starts with the grandmother imparting her stories of their culture onto this main character. The main character has brothers and family who do not engage with the history. He's the only one who does. He's also a queer character as well, which I always have loved reading queer stories. You probably have noticed from my book list. But I think that's kind of what draws him in, like this other, he's already othered as an immigrant, he's othered as a queer man. And so it's just so hard to describe that. It's just so beautiful. Like, I don't know how to describe it, to be honest. Do you have
Well,
words?
to sell it as like maybe just a fantasy book, it's about two boys. I'll say young men. Boys,
Yeah,
who,
June and Kima.
yeah, who are transporting a god across their land.
And the god kind of reminds me of Yababa from Spirited Away, where she's like super hateful, but you kind of love her because you're like queen, you know? So, but yeah, that's kind of the basic of the story, but the structure around it is wild. And I hate second person, two person point of view. But I think you could not tell the story any other way. And the author pretty much said, I think his dedication is basically to himself, and it's obvious that he wrote this because just the love for this story. And I don't know, I'm really excited to see what else he does. He has another novel I haven't read. Maybe I'll pick that up this year, but I highly recommend this. This was so good. It was definitely out of my wheelhouse, so really loved it.
Yeah. So that's our top 10. You got any reading goals this year?
I usually try to say like 25 books and then go from there. I am really excited. I'm going to read a book about The Great Gatsby that you recommended first, kind of like I read Nick this year. Maybe every year I'll read a Great Gatsby fan fiction, basically, now that that's in the common lexicon now. But yeah, I don't know. I just want to read a lot of different things. I want to read Maniac really bad. I want to do that thing where people like will put a couple of books together that are a similar topic and kind of like investigate a topic. My big one this year is the Weimar Republic. And then I want to end it by watching Cabaret.
Fair enough. My goal, and the reason why I even asked that is because my goal is to complete our bingo. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's why I asked that question.
Oh, sorry.
We hope to record another video this week. We made a bingo for one another, a reading bingo, where if we read a certain book that fits a square, then we get to cross it out. So we're going to do that. Hopefully we will record more. This was fun, right?
Yeah, I had a good time.
Yeah. So we'll see if we record. If not, life gets in the way. She works all the time. I am lazy all the time, and I have grad school. My brain goes to that, and teaching does take a lot out of me. I'm an introvert. But yeah, that's our top 10. I never would have guessed half of these books for me. I think I will continue to get through Vonnegut's stories. That's one of my goals. If Benjamin Labatut writes another book, I will definitely pick that up. But really, I'm just going to read for vibes once again. I think I'm going to read a lot of shorter novels. If it has fewer than 200 pages, it will be mine and it will be read. That's all I got. You got anything else?
I think that's about it.
All right, well, that's it. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, do whatever. We're going to put Mercury, our dog.
Say hello.
Thank you.
Bye.
Peace.